Call the American flag a filthy rag one more time. That's what the racist teacher hissed before she tried to rip it from a 17-year-old girl's hands. The flag that draped her grandfather's casket. She refused, so the teacher locked the door and ordered her favorite student to beat her down. Fists flew, blood hit the floor, and the flag tore in half. No one helped because this school ran on fear and favors, until her parents, elite special forces operators, fresh from combat, burst through the door. The bullies didn't just attack a girl, they declared war on a Delta Force family. This ends with a senator arrested in public, careers destroyed, and the sweetest justice you'll ever see. Stay until the very end. You won't believe how far they went to bury the truth and how spectacularly they failed. Subscribe right now.
This is a story you will never forget. The bell's harsh clang had barely faded when the Monday quiet shattered. A history classroom, thick with the faint scent of old books and floor wax, pulsed with unspoken tension. In the back rows, bored faces slouched. Two boys, Connor Whitaker and Dylan Brooks, never subtle, always loud, passed a crumpled football playbook under the desk, snickering as if daring anyone to call him out. Front row by the window sat Maya Harrison, 17, dark-eyed, sharp-jawed, her uniform pressed to perfection. She wore her JROTC jacket like armor. She stood out not because she tried, but because she simply couldn't blend in. Her posture spoke discipline. Her gaze carried quiet defiance. At exactly 8 a.m., the speaker above the chalkboard crackled to life. "Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance." Chairs scraped against linoleum as students shuffled to their feet, hands hesitating before settling over hearts. The American flag hung in the front corner, timeless yet strangely out of place. Maya lifted her chin, hand steady on her chest, lips moving with silent conviction. Across the aisle, Connor, blond, the kind of boy whose family name opened every door, nudged Dylan and rolled his eyes. Their hands never left their pockets. Dylan whispered just loud enough for nearby rows to hear, "Bet she sleeps in that uniform. Freak." Connor grinned and said louder, "Only way someone like her gets any respect." From the third row, Ethan, a slender, nervous boy whose voice rarely rose above a whisper, fidgeted with his pencil, eyes darting between the flag and the clock. When Connor spotted him, cruelty flashed in his gaze. He crumpled a sheet of notebook paper, wound up, and hurled it straight at Ethan's head. The thud was sharp, followed by the familiar ripple of laughter that winds through every American classroom. Ethan winced, head down, cheeks burning. Mrs. Evelyn Carver, the history teacher, in white pearls and a crisp blazer, her smile stretched too tight, watched from behind her desk. She saw everything. Her eyes flickered cold, then looked away. Not her problem. "Attention!" The principal's monotone voice concluded the pledge over the PA. Maya let her hand fall, eyes still fixed on the flag as the final words faded. Then she turned, slow, deliberate, and met Connor's stare with an intensity that cut the air between them. She didn't flinch, she didn't smile. She simply held his gaze, steady and unblinking, a silent challenge. Connor stiffened, heat rising in his neck. He hated being looked at like that, hated the quiet judgment from someone he considered beneath him. He hissed, lips barely moving, "What are you looking at, monkey?" Maya didn't hesitate. Her voice was low but clear. "I'm looking at someone who stands in the shadow of the flag and doesn't deserve its light." The room froze. A few students gasped, some smirked. Even Dylan fell silent. For one heartbeat, the school's rigid hierarchy cracked. Mrs. Evelyn Carver, sharp as ever, seized the moment. She slammed her palm on the desk. Crack! The sound demanded order, but her target was never Connor. Maya Harrison, disruption and disrespect have no place in my classroom. Go stand in the back now." Her tone carried the weight of unchallenged authority. Maya's fists clenched at her sides, but she kept her composure. She rose, gathered her bag, and walked to the back, stepping past snickering faces and dodging every outstretched foot. When she reached the wall, she straightened, refusing to show shame. Ethan met her eyes for a fleeting second, gratitude and fear mingling in his glance. Connor leaned back, triumphant, flashing Dylan a wolfish grin. His voice low but meant to carry. "Monkey girl, wait till a bell rings. We'll see who stands tall then." Mrs. Carver called for silence and continued the lesson, but the damage was done. The lecture on the American Revolution drifted unheard. At the front of the room, the flag hung motionless, a silent witness to the hypocrisy beneath it. Maya kept her gaze on that flag, anger simmering just below the surface. She thought of her grandfather, his medals, his stories of foxholes and fear, of brothers in arms who never came home, of a country that sometimes forgot who fought for it. She drew a long, steadying breath. Finally, the bell rang, breaking the spell. Chairs scraped again as students shuffled toward the door. Connor lingered, catching Maya's eye one last time. He tapped 2 fingers to his temple in a mock salute, lips curling into a sneer. "You're dead," he mouthed. And Maya, steady as stone, let her eyes rest on the flag once more, then settle on Connor, where honor ended and rot began.
Lunch hour at Crestwood High always felt like a circus. Students squeezed through narrow aisles, claiming their corners. 1,000 private hierarchies played out beneath flickering fluorescent lights. But on that Monday, the usual chaos carried an electric charge, as if something in the air was poised to snap. Maya balanced her tray. Milk carton, apple, a sandwich she rarely tasted. She kept her shoulders squared, gaze forward, ignoring the curious stares. She passed Ethan at the end of the lunch line. The bruise on his temple served as a silent reminder of the morning's cruelty. He avoided her eyes, shrinking into his seat. She took a few steady steps toward an empty table when suddenly a foot slid deliberately into her path. In one swift, calculated motion, Connor Whitaker stretched out his leg. Maya's shoe caught the edge and her tray jolted. Milk sloshed, the apple tumbled. She caught her balance before falling, knuckles whitening around the plastic. Connor's laughter sliced through the noise. "Need me to show you how civilized people walk, or is crawling more your thing?" His voice carried, cutting conversations short like a slap. Dylan barked a laugh, quick to back his friend. "Maybe next time she can use a leash. They're good for strays." Maya straightened, jaw tight, her uniform still crisp despite the humiliation. She bent to retrieve the apple, dusting it off with calm precision. Around her, students paused, some grinning, others pretending not to notice. She felt the familiar burn of being watched, weighed, judged. She fixed Connor with a look colder than January. "I don't need lessons from someone who has to buy his grades to pass." Her voice was soft, but the words struck hard. For a split second, Connor's smug confidence cracked. His face darkened, eyes flashing rage. Dylan glanced at him, uncertain. No one talked back to Connor, especially not like that. The cafeteria hushed for a moment. "You think you're clever?" Connor sneered, stepping close enough that his breath brushed her cheek. "Better keep that mouth shut before it gets you hurt." Maya didn't flinch. "You should worry less about me and more about the envelope your driver handed the teacher last week." She spoke barely above a whisper, meant only for him. Pretty thick envelope, wasn't it? Connor froze. The color drained from his face. For an instant, his bravado vanished, replaced by raw, ugly fear. Maya didn't dwell on it. She took her seat at the end of a table, back straight, eyes forward. She broke the apple in two and offered half to Ethan across the room. He stared, astonished, before accepting with trembling fingers. But Connor couldn't let it go. Rage twisted his features. With a single violent swipe, he knocked Maya's tray off the table. Food and milk spilled across the linoleum. The sharp clatter silenced the room. 100 heads turned. Right on cue, Mrs. Evelyn Carver materialized, heels clicking, face pinched with irritation. "What's going on here?" Her eyes barely grazed Connor before settling on Maya and the mess at her feet. Maya remained silent, hands steady at her sides. Connor jumped in, voice slick with fake outrage. "She started it. She just threw her tray." Dylan chimed in. "She was angry, started yelling and throwing stuff everywhere." Mrs. Carver pursed her lips, making no effort to seek the truth. "I should have known," she sighed, hashing her hand as if the whole scene were a personal inconvenience. "Clean this up now. You'll stay after school for detention as well, and let's hope you learn some manners before you disgrace that uniform again." A couple of freshmen snickered. Others watched Maya, some with pity, others with quiet admiration. She knelt, slow and deliberate, gathering the scattered pieces of her lunch. Sticky milk soaked into her sleeve, but she didn't care. Her focus stayed on the apple now rolling near Connor's expensive sneakers. Maya picked it up, met Connor's eyes, then looked past him to Mrs. Carver, who hovered like a vulture. She spoke quietly, just loud enough for them to hear. "Money can buy you a passing grade, but it'll never buy you a conscience." Connor's mouth tightened into a hard, ugly line. Mrs. Carver's face paled, a flash of anxiety breaking through her mask. Maya rose, refusing to bow her head. She dropped the apple in the trash, wiped her hands, and turned her back on them both. The cafeteria watched, caught between shock and awe. Mrs. Carver's eyes followed Maya with venom she could barely conceal. It wasn't just defiance, it was a threat. She understood now. This girl knew too much.
The next morning, Maya had already drafted the email. She kept it strictly factual: dates, times, witnesses, the slur Connor had hissed, the paper ball striking Ethan, the way Mrs. Evelyn Carver had watched and done nothing. She attached a photo of Ethan's bruise and a scan of her morning quiz, marked wrong despite answers that matched the textbook exactly. She sent it to Principal Harlan Reed with the subject line, "Formal report, harassment, and targeted grading." She waited. Nothing arrived by lunch, nothing after fifth period. At dismissal, her inbox stayed empty. No acknowledgement, no receipt, no meeting request. The school server had a remarkable talent for losing complaints that might embarrass the wrong people. The hallway thinned after the final bell. Lockers slammed shut, laughter faded down stairwells, and the building settled into its late afternoon hush. Maya packed slowly, aware of lingering eyes, some hostile, some ashamed. She slipped her notebook into her bag and turned toward the door. "Miss Harrison." The voice cut across the emptying corridor like a wire. Mrs. Evelyn Carver stood in the doorway of room 212, pearls gleaming, smile stiff as varnish. "With me." Maya stepped inside. The blinds were half drawn. Gray light striped the room. Papers sat stacked in precise order on the teacher's desk. Footsteps from the hallway faded to silence. The door clicked shut. "Pick that up," Mrs. Carver said, tossing a stapled packet at Maya's feet. It skidded across the linoleum. Maya crouched, retrieved it, and scanned the red marks. Names, dates, case summaries she knew by heart were crossed out, each correct answer replaced with an invented error. At the top, in tight, impatient handwriting, C-. She looked up. Every response aligned perfectly with the reference pages. Mrs. Carver leaned against the desk, arms folded. "You thought that email would go somewhere?" Her voice softened into pity that stung like a slap. "In this school, I am the law." Maya kept her breathing even. She straightened the pages, aligning the corners with deliberate care. She had learned to move slowly around predators, give them nothing to seize. "I know you think you are," she said calmly, "and I also know why Principal Reed does whatever you say." A flicker of annoyance crossed the teacher's face. "Careful." Maya continued, voice steady. His wife wouldn't be pleased to learn about those weekend trips out by the highway, the little place with the red booths and fried catfish. She nodded once. I work there on Saturdays. Silence crashed down, thick enough to bend the air. For the first time all year, the mask slipped. Mrs. Carver's fingers loosened. The pen she held clattered to the floor and rolled under the desk. Her pupils contracted, then flared. Color drained from her cheeks, leaving them brittle and powdered. "You're lying," she said, but the words came out breathless. Maya shook her head. She remembered the night she had seen them, Reed with his tie loosened, Carver with her pearls tucked into her purse, both laughing like teenagers behind a pillar near the kitchen door. She had ducked into the dish room before they noticed, steam rising around her face, the roar of the dishwasher drowning her heartbeat. "I'm not trying to blackmail you. I'm trying to protect myself." She paused, letting the words settle. "Leave me alone, grade my work fairly, and your secret stays buried." Mrs. Carver's hands trembled. She gripped the desk edge to steady herself. The authority she wore so effortlessly before students cracked, exposing raw panic beneath. But panic soon hardened into something colder. "You think you're clever," she said, voice low and sharp. "You think one little secret gives you power." Maya offered no reply. She slung her bag over her shoulder and walked to the door. For a moment, she expected the teacher to stop her. Instead, Mrs. Carver watched in silence as Maya turned the handle and stepped into the hall. Maya moved past empty lockers and shadowed classrooms, the weight of the confrontation settling heavy in her chest. She felt no triumph. She felt exposed. Truth had become a shield, but shields drew strikes. At the end of the hall, she paused and glanced back. Through the narrow door window, she saw Mrs. Carver pick up her phone. The woman's hands had steadied. Her expression had turned resolute. Mrs. Carver turned away from the window and dialed. "Listen to me," she said into the phone, urgent yet controlled. "The girl knows. We need to get rid of her." The line went dead. Uniform Day always carried a different charge at Crestwood High School. The halls filled with students in JROTC jackets, pins glinting, shoes polished to a mirror finish.
Some wore their uniforms with unmistakable pride. Others, like Connor Whitaker and his crew, treated it as nothing more than a costume party, an excuse to roll their eyes and ridicule anyone who treated the day with any real seriousness. Maya stepped into the main corridor. Her jacket was impeccable, sleeves creased with precision, a single weathered service badge pinned proudly above her heart. Her grandfather's, handed down through generations and polished that morning until it gleamed under every light. She carried herself as though each step held meaning, head held high, shoulders squared, completely unafraid of the whispers and stares that always trailed in her wake. Connor lurked near the stairwell, eyes scanning the crowd for vulnerable targets. He noticed Maya's quiet confidence right away and the small, old-fashioned box she held carefully in her hand. He nudged Dylan, lips twisting into a mean, mocking smirk. "Look at her marching around like she owns the whole school. Is she trying to impress her invisible friends?" Dylan snorted, but Connor's words were aimed at the growing cluster of onlookers. When Mrs. Evelyn Carver strode down the hallway, her face tight and pinched as she searched for any sign of trouble, Connor caught her eye and jerked his chin sharply toward Maya. Mrs. Carver didn't lash out at Maya the way she usually did. She seemed off balance, her gaze darting nervously between the girl and the boy. That brief flicker of uncertainty didn't escape Connor. His grin grew wider and crueler. Today felt like his moment. But as Maya entered history class, the atmosphere had already turned sour and heavy. Connor couldn't hold himself back. He leaped to his feet, voice booming loud enough for everyone to hear. "Well, look who showed up trying to play soldier." The room went still. Some students dropped their desks to their desks. A few snickered nervously, but Connor craved more. He wanted a full spectacle. He swaggered down the aisle, closing the distance between them. "Let's all give a big hand for Private Harrison," he jeered, his tone thick with false respect. "Nice jacket. Did you pick it up at Goodwill or steal it straight out of someone's closet?" Dylan jumped in eagerly. "Maybe she borrowed it from her imaginary dad, the one who works construction sites."
Maya met Connor's stare without flinching. "Say whatever you want about my family, but at least they earned everything they have. Can you say the same?" The words landed hard, like an open-handed slap. Connor's face flushed deep red. He glanced around for support and found Mrs. Carver doing a subtle, encouraging nod from her narrowed eyes. Fueled by that silent approval, Connor spun toward the class. "You all see that pin?" He jabbed a finger at it, almost shouting. "That's not even hers. She's faking it. Stolen valor. Her family doesn't have any real medals. Her dad's a nobody. Her mom cleans floors for a living. Guess some people need made-up stories just to fit in." Gasps and uneasy murmurs spread through the room. Maya stood firm, chin lifted high, refusing to let the insults force any trace of shame onto her face. Mrs. Carver seized the opening, her voice cutting like shattered grass. "This is a serious accusation, Connor. If Maya cannot provide proof of her claim, it's a direct insult to our nation's veterans and to this entire institution. Maya, remove your jacket and hand it over to me, now." The class watched in breathless silence. Maya didn't budge. Connor grinned triumphantly, feeling the power swing back to him. He stepped closer, seized her sleeve, and yanked hard. "You heard her. You're not worthy to wear this. Take it off." Maya didn't recoil or shrink. Instead, she pulled free, straightened her posture, and reached calmly into her backpack. Her movements remained slow and deliberate. She drew out a small oak box, old and battered, yet lovingly polished over years of care, and set it gently on Mrs. Carver's desk. She flipped open the lid. Inside, perfectly folded, lay an American flag, its fabric soft and edges worn from time, but preserved with unmistakable reverence. Silence rippled outward like a wave. Even Connor faltered for a moment. Maya's voice rang clear and unwavering, carrying a weight and depth that sliced through every layer of scorn. "This flag was draped over my grandfather's coffin when he came home from World War II. He was a soldier, a black man who fought for a country that didn't always fight for him. This medal," she lightly tapped the pin on her chest, "is his. My father and mother served as well. Everything I wear with their full blessing. I don't have to prove my worth to anyone who hides behind cheap insults." She fixed Connor's gaze, every word, deliberate and unmistakable. "People like you think honor is just a patch you can sew on or buy, something you can fake. But honor isn't for sale. It's paid for in blood, sweat, and sacrifice." Connor tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out thin and forced. "Yeah, right. Anyone can buy a flag. Anyone can invent a sob story. You don't belong here, and you know it." A deeper hush settled over the classroom. Maya turned to face her classmates directly, her voice softening, yet pulling them in. "We study history every day. Dates, names, battles. But do we ever stop to ask who really wrote it? Who bled for it? Don't let shiny things or loud voices fool you. Respect isn't given to whoever shouts the loudest or has the richest dad. It's earned, and it's protected." A few students who had snickered moments earlier shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Ethan, quiet in the back row, gave a small but firm nod. Even some of the athletes averted their eyes, suddenly uneasy. The energy of the room shifted, subtle but impossible to ignore. Mrs. Evelyn Carver, frustration contorting her features, slammed her hand down on the desk. "Enough of this dramatic performance. All students except Maya and Connor out. Now, I will deal with this disrespect personally." Chairs scraped loudly as whispers erupted, and the class emptied in a hurried wave of tension. As the last student slipped through the door, it closed with a hollow, final thud, leaving only 3 figures and the battered oak box in a room thick with impending threat. Mrs. Carver abandoned all pretense. She gave Connor a single sharp nod. He moved swiftly, dragging a chair across the floor and wedging it firmly under the door handle. Maya watched, jaw clenched tight, refusing to retreat into the corner they wanted to force her into.
"Give me that flag," Mrs. Evelyn Carver snapped, her voice cutting through the heavy quiet. "You think you can play the martyr in my classroom? That scrap is as filthy as your family's lies." Maya pulled the flag closer, arms locked rigid. "This flag is 1,000 times cleaner than your conscience," she fired back, steady as stone. "At least it never betrayed its oath, unlike you sneaking around with the principal behind your husband's back." Mrs. Carver's eyes widened in a flash of fury and fear before narrowing to dangerous slits. "Don't lecture me about loyalty. You're the fraud, just like that uniform." Connor circled slowly, cracking his knuckles, face flush with rage and humiliation. "Hand it over," he growled. "I'm not asking." Maya met his glare without blinking. "If you touch this flag, you prove everything I said. Go ahead, show everyone who you really are." The words only fueled his anger. Mrs. Carver hissed through gritted teeth. "She thinks she's untouchable. Let's see how tough she is when she's truly alone." She stepped closer, cloying perfume filling the air, her face near enough to reveal every bitter line etched into her skin. Maya's heart pounded, but she held her ground and refused to look away. "You're not angry because I broke rules," she said, voice ice cold. "You're angry because I exposed you. You hide behind your title, your connections, your secrets, but secrets are all you have." Without warning, Mrs. Carver's hand lashed out across Maya's face with force that snapped her head sideways. A burning sting exploded on her cheek. For one frozen instant, the room rang with silence. Mrs. Carver spat. "Give me the flag now." Maya staggered but stayed on her feet. She straightened, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. "No." Mrs. Carver lunged, fingers clawing for the flag. Maya twisted away, shielding it with her body, arms gripping like iron. Connor charged in too, seizing her shoulder and yanking hard. "Connor, do it!" Mrs. Carver shrieked. He didn't hesitate. His fist drove into Maya's ribs, forcing the breath from her lungs. She gasped, struggling to hold on. Still, she refused to release the flag. "Let go!" Connor roared, wrenching her arm backward. Mrs. Carver clawed at her other side. "Give it here! That rag doesn't belong to you!" Maya doubled over from another blow, pain radiating through her core, vision swimming, yet her grip never loosened. She curled protectively around the folded flag, absorbing punch after punch, refusing to surrender it. Her mind flashed to her grandfather's stories, how soldiers held the line even when hope seemed lost, how dignity was sometimes the only weapon left. "You want it so badly," Maya rasped through the pain. "Take it! You'll never own what it truly means." Connor yanked harder. Mrs. Carver pulled with desperate strength. The aged fabric stretched taut between them. Then came a sickening rip, loud and final. Threads snapped as the flag tore down the seam, one half remaining in Maya's arms, the other clutched in Connor's fists. Everyone froze, the full weight of their actions crashing down at once. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Maya sank slowly to her knees, tears stinging her eyes but refusing to fall. The silence felt sacred, brutally violated by violence. Mrs. Carver stared at her own hands, a flicker of horror crossing her face before anger buried it again. "Look what you made us do! Look what you brought on yourself!" Connor loomed over her, chest heaving, eyes wild. "It's your fault," he muttered, voice cracking. "You should have let go." Maya cradled her half of the flag, ragged edges bleeding red, white, and blue threads into her palm. "You destroyed something sacred," she whispered, voice trembling with pain and fury, "and you'll answer for it." A sudden pounding echoed from the hallway, faint at first, then thunderous against the silence. The door rattled violently, hinges screamed. Then, with a deafening crash, it burst inward, splinters flying across the linoleum. Two figures stormed into the room, uniforms dark, boots heavy, an imposing man whose stare commanded absolute authority, and beside him a woman whose eyes cut sharper than steel. For one endless second no one spoke. The gravity of the scene hung thick and damning in the air. A cold chill swept through the ruined classroom as Colonel Nathan Harrison entered, broad-shouldered, granite-faced, his Delta Force uniform immaculate. Every detail radiated command. As the leader of the nation's most elite special operations unit, his mere presence froze the room. Every movement was deliberate, radiating silent authority. Behind him entered Major Sophia Harrison, combat field surgeon, compact, razor-sharp, medical kit slung at her side, eyes scanning for threats and injuries alike, missing nothing. She moved with the precise calm of someone who had steadied chaos on battlefields, her presence slicing through the tension like a scalpel. The shattered door hung open behind them before swinging shut with heavy finality, trapping everyone inside the aftermath of violence. Principal Harlan Reed lingered uselessly at the threshold, knuckles white, face drained of color. Mrs. Evelyn Carver and Connor froze in place, still clutching the torn pieces of the flag as though the fabric burned their hands. Colonel Nathan Harrison didn't spare them a glance. His steps were slow, measured, boots silent on the tile as he passed the trembling boy. Connor shrank back, bracing for a strike that never came. The colonel never broke stride. He knelt beside Maya, who remained on her knees, arms locked protectively around the shredded flag, blood smeared at her lip. Pain etched her posture, but her spirit stood unbroken. He gently lifted the ruined flag as though cradling a wounded comrade, his stern eyes softening just a fraction. "Maya," he said quietly, his deep baritone warmer than any hug, "did you hold your ground?" She nodded, words caught in her throat. Major Sophia Harrison crouched immediately at her daughter's side, hands moving with practiced speed, checking bruises, tracing the welt on her cheek, pressing carefully along her ribs. "She did," Sophia confirmed, voice crisp and professional. "Efficient. Mission complete. We'll handle the rest." Earlier, when Maya had first uncovered the corruption rotting the school from within, she had sent her parents a coded red alert, one neither of them ever ignored. The instant they heard the strain in her voice, Nathan and Sophia had dropped everything, flown straight from their base and driven to the school, ready for whatever fight awaited their daughter. Colonel Harrison rose, folding the desecrated flag with reverent care. When he turned to face Mrs. Carver and Connor, his calm was more terrifying than rage, a storm tightly leashed. "Do you understand what you've done?" His voice was low, the kind that commanded soldiers in combat. "You didn't just put hands on my daughter. You defiled the flag my family bled for, the flag millions died defending. This isn't mere assault. It's a betrayal of everything this country stands for." Mrs. Carver's face twisted between terror and defiance. I was disciplining her. She's insubordinate, disrespectful, a constant disruption." Sophia stepped forward, eyes hard as flint. "You didn't discipline. You tormented. You unleashed your own weakness on a child. You abused the authority entrusted to you and injured a student under your protection." Mrs. Carver backed away, feet scrambling for balance, until her spine hit the chalkboard. "I'm a teacher." Sophia cut her off with a withering glare. "No, you're a coward hiding behind a desk." Connor stood rigid, sweat beading on his forehead, mouth working soundlessly like a fish out of water. He looked at the colonel and found no trace of mercy. I was just," he stammered. Colonel Harrison silenced him with one dismissive glance. Then he turned to Principal Reed, who stood frozen, hands shaking, trapped between shame and dread. "Mr. Reed," the colonel said, voice now carrying the full weight of command, "you allowed this to happen in your school on your watch. You permitted a teacher and a student to physically assault my daughter and desecrate a flag my family bled for, the flag millions died defending. This isn't mere assault. It's a betrayal of everything this country stands for." No one moved. No one dared speak. Fear settled heavy over the room. Colonel Harrison pulled a satellite phone from his jacket and dialed with steady fingers. His voice rang clear and unwavering. "Military police, this is Colonel Harrison. Lock down the campus. I want the FBI on site within 10 minutes. We have a federal incident. Desecration of the United States flag, assault on a military defendant, and conspiracy. Secure all exits and detain those involved." The last shreds of defiance crumbled. Mrs. Carver slid down the chalkboard until she sat slunked, head buried in her hands. Connor stood, paralyzed, face ashen, barely breathing. Sophia took Maya gently by the arm, helping her to her feet and pulling her close.
Maya's head still spun, but in her parents' presence she found solid ground again. Colonel Harrison didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply turned, every muscle coiled with controlled power and dignity, the ruined flag still cradled carefully in his hands. "Justice will be served," he said to the room, words carrying absolute certainty, in the courts and in the eyes of everyone who still believes in the cost of freedom. Behind him, Principal Reed sagged against the wall, sweat tracing lines down his face as the full weight of his cowardice finally crushed him. Outside, the distant wail of sirens rose, a signal that the era of silence and shielded power had ended. Connor, hands trembling violently, fumbled his phone from his pocket and typed with clumsy thumbs, "Dad, help, it's bad, really bad." At the front of the room, Mrs. Carver's face collapsed as she stared at the shredded flag and the wreckage of the classroom, the remnants of her authority slipping irretrievably through her fingers. The air hung thick with panic and the sharp bite of regret, while half-closed blinds only allowed for thin slivers of afternoon light to cut through the settling dust.
Principal Harlan Reed stood behind his cluttered desk, wringing his hands and casting nervous glances at the Harrison family, as though expecting them to explode at any second. Mrs. Evelyn Carver perched stiffly on a hard chair by the window, her face drawn and ashen, eyes fixed anywhere but on the others in the room. Connor sat slumped in his seat, sweat-soaked and silent, fingers twitching restlessly over his phone. Colonel Nathan Harrison, still in full uniform with the torn flag folded carefully in his arms, stood tall and unyielding, exuding an icy authority that chilled the air. Major Sophia Harrison remained close to Maya, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. Maya herself, bruised yet unbroken, sat quietly, eyes clear, posture steady, fear nowhere in sight. Colonel Harrison turned to Principal Reed. "You will suspend this teacher and this student immediately. I want their badges and ID on your desk before I walk out of here, and I want a formal statement prepared for federal authorities. You're complicit in this. You'll answer for every moment you chose to look away." Reed swallowed hard, face glistening with sweat. "Colonel Harrison, please." The plea died as the door burst open. A man swept in whose very presence seemed to shift the room's gravity. Tailored suit, cufflinks flashing, stride, confident and unapologetic. Senator Victor Whitaker, chairman of the school board, entered as though he owned not only the office, but the entire district. Every head turned sharply toward him. Two aides trailed close behind, legal pads ready, their gazes cold and calculating. Whitaker didn't acknowledge Colonel Harrison at first. He surveyed the room with the detached arrogance of a ruler inspecting his domain. When his eyes landed on Connor, they softened for the briefest instant before hardening again as they settled on Colonel Harrison. "So this is the hero everyone's talking about." His voice was smooth, rehearsed, laced with venom. "Colonel Harrison, Delta Force, what an impressive record. Shame we couldn't meet under more pleasant circumstances." Colonel Harrison's stance never wavered. "Senator, I assume you're here to take responsibility for your son's actions, like any decent father would." Whitaker let out a short, chilling laugh. "Let's not rush to conclusions, Colonel. I'm here because the school reached out. Apparently there has been a misunderstanding." He shot a pointed glare at Principal Reed, who seemed to shrink further. Sophia's voice sliced through, clear and frigid. "Your son assaulted our daughter. Your school covered it up. A teacher desecrated the flag, and your board has ignored it all." Whitaker didn't flinch. "What I see is a young woman with a history of insubordination, disrespect, and aggression, a family eager to turn this into a media spectacle for their own gain." Connor straightened slightly, drawing courage from his father's presence. Mrs. Carver's lips pressed into a thin line, a spark of confidence returning. Colonel Harrison's jaw tightened. "I have witnesses, I have physical evidence, and I have no intention of letting this disappear in your office, Senator." Whitaker stepped closer, smile cold as frost. "Colonel, you're underestimating how things work here. You may wear the uniform, but you don't run this town. I do. I have friends in every office that counts. One call, and your military career stalls permanently. One headline, and your daughter's future vanishes before it begins." Maya rose calmly, voice firm yet measured. "Threats don't change the truth, Senator." Whitaker ignored her, pulling a thick folder from his briefcase and slamming it on the desk. "This is Maya's disciplinary record. Fights, disrespect, even violence against staff. All meticulously documented. The press will devour it. Your word means nothing against a pattern like this." Sophia stepped forward, expression cold as winter steel. "Fake files, fabricated incidents. Is this how you protect your own? By destroying any child who stands in your way?" Whitaker's lips curled. "It's not personal, Major. It's politics. And in this town, the law bans highway." Colonel Harrison met his stare without blinking. "And if we refuse to be intimidated?" Whitaker leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper meant only for the adults. "Then I use every tool at my disposal. Military funding for this school gone. Base privileges for your family revoked. Your name, Colonel, turns from honor to liability." Principal Reed's eyes darted frantically between the two men, sweat beading at his temples. Connor shifted uneasily, his newfound boldness fading. Sophia didn't flinch. A cold smile touched her lips. "You want to play by the rules of law, fine, but you'll discover we know a different kind, one you can't bribe or bury under paperwork." Whitaker paused, then barked a sharp laugh. "Is that so?" She nodded, eyes locked on his. "You wanted a fight, Senator. Now you'll get one. Not in your courtrooms or boardrooms, but whether truth is the only thing that matters." For a tense moment, the room balanced on a razor's edge. Then Sophia turned to Colonel Harrison, her voice cutting sharp.
"Let's show him how justice works, military style." The next morning, the Harrison home hung heavy with tension and silence. Sunlight barely filtered through the blinds as Colonel Nathan Harrison, Major Sophia Harrison, and Maya sat around the kitchen table, their half-eaten breakfast turning cold. The television murmured in the background, volume low, yet the images and headlines screamed loud enough to smother any hope. "Breaking news," the anchor intoned, lips pursed in rehearsed concern. "Daughter of decorated military officer under investigation for violence at Crest Miv High." A polished montage played, edited clips from security cameras, shaky cell phone footage, hallway shots, Maya's face flashing stern and fierce as she stood over Connor, followed by a brief, decontextualized moment of her raising her voice at Mrs. Evelyn Carver. Both segments were brutally truncated, beginnings and ends sliced away, all context shredded. A succession of talking heads paraded across the screen, pushing the same narrative. "Why would a military child behave this way?" one speculated. "Is this the result of a home obsessed with rigid discipline?" a local parent raged. "I don't care who her father is, you don't attack teachers." The ticker at the bottom hammered the message home. Family uses military influence to threaten educators. Unstable teen at center of controversy. Sophia's hands clenched around her coffee mug until her knuckles turned white. "This is Whitaker," she said quietly. "He's feeding them every lie he can invent. They never even asked for our side." Nathan slammed his fist on the table, plates rattling. "He thinks he can turn the public against us, bury the truth under headlines instead of facts." Maya sat straighter, eyes locked on the screen, unflinching and unafraid. She watched the distorted clips loop again and again, each edit more damning than the last. She could hear the blurred crowd in the background, classmates' laughter and jeers crystal clear. Anonymous online accounts spewed venom. Photos of Nathan in uniform were doctored beside fake mugshots of Maya. One comment read, "Maybe her daddy should have taught her real respect." Another, "Military privilege is worse than old money privilege." Maya drew a slow, deep breath. "They want us angry. They want us reckless. That's how they win, by making us look like the monsters they're pretending we are." Sophia reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "We know the truth, but truth alone isn't enough when they control the narrative." Nathan paced behind them, eyes blazing. "We go public. We stand our ground. We demand equal time. I have contacts in military media." But before he could finish, the doorbell cut through the air, sharp and insistent. Sophia rose and crossed the foyer to glance out the window. A sheriff's cruiser idled at the curb, and on the porch stood Sheriff Roy Bennett, an old ally of Whitaker's, known for glad-handing and fundraisers and turning a blind eye when it served him. Nathan opened the door, voice like tempered steel. "Sheriff, what brings you here?" Bennett wasted no words, extending a folded document. "Colonel Harrison, Major Harrison, I'm here on official business. Warrant to bring Maya in for questioning. Alleged assault on a fellow student." His tone was clipped, devoid of apology. The badge glinted against his tan uniform shirt, a symbol of law wielded as a tool for someone else. Sophia's hands clenched around her coffee mug until her knuckles turned white. "This is Whitaker," she said quietly. "He's feeding them every lie he can invent. They never even asked for our side." Nathan slammed his fist on the table, plates rattling. "He thinks he can turn the public against us, bury the truth under headlines instead of facts." Maya sat straighter, eyes locked on the screen, unflinching and unafraid. She watched the distorted clips loop again and again, each edit more damning than the last. She could hear the blurred crowd in the background, classmates' laughter and jeers crystal clear. Anonymous online accounts spewed venom. Photos of Nathan in uniform were doctored beside fake mugshots of Maya. One comment read, "Maybe her daddy should have taught her real respect." Another, "Military privilege is worse than old money privilege." Maya drew a slow, deep breath. "They want us angry. They want us reckless. That's how they win, by making us look like the monsters they're pretending we are." Sophia reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "We know the truth, but truth alone isn't enough when they control the narrative." Nathan paced behind them, eyes blazing. "We go public. We stand our ground. We demand equal time. I have contacts in military media." But before he could finish, the doorbell cut through the air, sharp and insistent. Sophia rose and crossed the foyer to glance out the window. A sheriff's cruiser idled at the curb, and on the porch stood Sheriff Roy Bennett, an old ally of Whitaker's, known for glad-handing at fundraisers and turning a blind eye when it served him. Nathan opened the door, voice like tempered steel. "Sheriff, what brings you here?" Bennett wasted no words, extending a folded document. "Colonel Harrison, Major Harrison, I'm here on official business. Warrant to bring Maya in for questioning. Alleged assault on a fellow student." His tone was clipped, devoid of apology. The badge glinted against his tan uniform shirt, a symbol of law wielded as a tool for someone else. Sophia stepped forward, eyes flashing. "On what grounds? She was the one attacked. You've seen the medical report." Bennett shook his head. "It's out of my hands. Complaint originated from Senator Whitaker's office. Orders are orders." For a moment, Nathan looked ready to shred the paper in his fist. Maya stopped him, placing a cool, steady hand on his arm. "This is exactly what they want, Dad. Us losing control on camera, looking dangerous. Don't give it to them." The sheriff's radio crackled, a stark reminder of the world waiting outside. Maya nodded, resolve unshaken. "I'll go. I have nothing to hide." As she grabbed her jacket, Sophia pulled her into a fierce hug. "You're never alone, not for a second." Nathan locked eyes with the sheriff, voice low and lethal. "If anything happens to my daughter, I'll make sure every oversight committee in this state haunts you for the rest of your career." Bennett's jaw tightened, but he offered no reply. The cruiser door slammed shut. Maya glanced back at her parents, Sophia standing strong, Nathan silent and seething. She drew strength from their faces. She would need every bit of it for what lay ahead. Inside, Sophia switched off the television, sickened by the fabricated storm. They were erasing Maya's story one headline at a time. Nathan stared at the empty kitchen, voice heavy. There has to be someone who saw everything, someone not afraid of Whitaker, someone who knows the real truth. Sophia's eyes sharpened with sudden focus. "The janitor, Mr. Ramirez. He's always around, always watching, never speaks a word." A spark of hope flickered between them. Even as the cruiser pulled away, Maya remembered the quiet, unwavering gaze of the old janitor. Mr. Ramirez, mute to most, invisible to many, but never blind. He saw more than anyone gave him credit for, and somewhere in the shadowed corners of Crestwood High, the truth still waited for its witness. Twilight settled over Crestwood High, casting long blue shadows across the back lot. The world beyond the fence was winding down, but Maya moved through the empty corridors with quiet purpose.
She slipped out the side door, avoiding the main hallways, her footsteps soft on the cracked pavement. If anyone still lingered at the school this late, it would be the one person who saw everything yet never spoke a word, Mr. Ramirez, the silent janitor. She found him exactly where she had hoped, by the battered maintenance shed, sorting through bins of mop heads and tangled extension cords. He moved with the slow, careful caution of someone whose body remembered old pain, but when he saw Maya approach, his posture straightened instinctively. A worn army ball cap hid most of his gray hair, and the faded patch on his jacket told a story few at Crestwood ever bothered to ask about. He gave a quiet nod in greeting and set his broom aside. Maya hesitated only a moment before speaking. "I need your help, Mr. Ramirez. I know you were there outside the history room. I saw you when the others left. You're always there when nobody else wants to be." He glanced at the door behind him, then down at his hands, knuckles swollen, fingers stiff, silent reminders of service and sacrifice he never mentioned. He didn't reply aloud. Instead, he pulled a small notepad from his pocket and wrote a few lines with a stub of pencil. "I see too much. Better to forget. Not my fight." Maya shook her head, stepping closer, voice steady yet pleading. "It is your fight, sir. Maybe not just for me, maybe not just for this school, but for what's right. I know what it feels like to want to disappear, but silence lets them win." Mr. Ramirez's eyes lifted, and something old and proud flickered there, an instinct forged in muddy foxholes and sleepless nights. He looked away as though embarrassed to meet her gaze. She pressed gently on. "You've served, didn't you? I can tell by how you watch people's hands, how you always stay near an exit. You know what it means to keep your head down when bullets fly, but this time the fight is right here." His lips pressed into a hard line. He scribbled again, slower. "Doesn't matter. They'll fire me. Worse than fired. Whitaker finds ways." Maya nodded, acknowledging the fear. "You think I'm not afraid? They want to ruin my family, destroy my father's entire career. But you—" She lowered her voice. "Mrs. Carver mocked you, didn't she? Called you damaged goods, said you were only good for cleaning up after real Americans." He flinched as though the words had struck him physically. He stared at the shed wall, jaw clenched so tightly it trembled. Maya continued, voice gentle but firm. "You've already survived worse than her. You survived men who wanted you gone, who thought you didn't matter. You carried a uniform longer than she ever will. Are you going to let them take everything you earned?" His breathing quickened. He wrote, "If I talk, who listens?" Maya met his eyes directly. "I will, and if you help me, I promise the right people will too. My mother is a field surgeon. My father commands Delta Force. You don't have to do this alone, not this time." Mr. Ramirez's shoulders sagged for a moment, as though the weight pressed harder. Then something reignited inside him. He stood taller, almost at attention. With hands that shook only slightly, he rummaged through his battered toolbox and pulled out a tiny black memory card wrapped in a plastic bag. He held it out to Maya, eyes shining with the gravity of what he was risking. She accepted it with both hands, handling it as though it were the most precious thing in the world. "Thank you, sir. You have more courage than anyone in that building." Mr. Ramirez shook his head, but for the first time a faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. He scribbled one final note. "Camera invent. School's fake. Mine's real. Only me?" Maya nodded, understanding completely. "You saw everything." He gave a small, crisp salute, then turned back to his work, shoulders squaring with renewed purpose. Maya stood there a moment longer, heart pounding, not from fear, but from hope. She slipped the memory card into her jacket, mind already racing ahead to what came next. As she left the shed, she glanced back. Mr. Ramirez watched her go with a steady, unblinking gaze, the quiet look soldiers share when battles pass from one hand to another. She walked away held high, carrying not just evidence, but the silent trust of a man who had finally chosen to fight back. The school's cameras were fake, but the mute janitor had his own hidden record of the truth.
The following morning, Crestwood High hummed with rumors. Some students whispered about police cars on campus, others about teachers teetering on the edge of breakdown. But deep inside the school's computer lab, raw panic reigned in secret. Mrs. Evelyn Carver and Principal Harlan Reed hovered over the main server, eyes darting toward the door with every click of the mouse. "He said he already wiped the footage," Mrs. Carver snapped, sweat beading along her brow. "But what if something slipped through? I need everything gone, today." Whitaker's fingers trembled as he navigated the security folders. "I'm doing it. All video files from this week deleted. Every backup drive erased. There's nothing left to recover." He glanced at her, face haunted. "If this gets out, it's not just your job, it's all of us." In the hallway, Connor's friends lingered, one ear pressed to the door. "She's freaking out," Dylan whispered. "Bet she regrets ever messing with Harrison." Meanwhile, miles away at the Harrison home, Maya arrived breathless, clutching Mr. Ramirez's tiny memory card like a lifeline. She burst into the living room where Colonel Nathan and Major Sophia waited, tension thick enough to cut. She handed the card to her mother. "He saw everything. The janitor, he recorded it. He gave me this, said the school cameras were all for show." Sophia's eyes flashed with instant understanding. She led them to Nathan's study where a secure laptop waited. Maya watched as her mother inserted the card, hands steady yet swift. A dialogue box appeared, a wall of encrypted code instead of simple video files. Maya's heart sank. "It's locked?" Sophia nodded, a faint smile breaking through. "Military field tech. They trained me for worse than this." She began entering commands, passwords, decryption algorithms, focus absolute. Nathan hovered behind, muscles taut, every second stretching into eternity. Outside, the pressure mounted. Sophia cracked the encryption layer by layer. Lines of code scrolled as files emerged, timestamps, camera angles, silent feeds. The progress bar climbed, 15%, 32%, 54%. Back at the school, Mrs. Carver leaned over Reed, watching files vanish from the system. "Are you sure nothing can be recovered?" Reed wiped his brow. "Even District IT couldn't pull it back now. It's gone." But not everything. Not the truth. The Harrison living room fell hushed. Only the laptop's soft whir broke the silence. Nathan paced, checking curtains. Maya stared at the progress bar, jaw clenched. Sophia's eyes never left the screen. "Almost there," she murmured. "Just a little more." The bar crept forward. 80%, 90%. "Come on," Maya whispered. At 98%, the lights flickered. The laptop's hum faltered. Sophia shot Nathan a sharp look. He bolted to the breaker box. It wasn't a household fault. Outside, a utility truck idling, man in plain jackets working the power line. Whitaker's handiwork. Nathan growled low. "He's cutting the whole block." The screen flashed. Power loss imminent, shutting down. Sophia's fingers flew, copying the partially recovered files to a portable drive. At 99%, the room plunged into darkness. The laptop died. Silence pressed heavy with defeat. Maya's voice cut through the black. "We know we have it. This isn't just about grades or teachers anymore. It's war." Nathan's silhouette appeared at the window, jaw set like granite. "We keep fighting. They want us scared and cornered." Sophia cradled the drive. Her face glowed faintly from the dying battery light. "We got most of it. Enough for now, but they'll hit harder next time." Maya nodded, adrenaline and fear surging together. "We're not alone anymore, and we're not backing down." Beyond their shuttered windows, darkness spread through the neighborhood, a silent message from Whitaker. "This is my territory." But in the heart of that blackout, the Harrison family stood united, evidence and resolve burning brighter than any power grid. The battle had only just begun. The diner on Route 27 had seen better days. A battered neon sign buzzed weakly above the door, and the cracked red booths bore the scars of 1,000 forgotten arguments.
On a morning that felt colder than the calendar suggested, Colonel Nathan Harrison sat by the diner window, coffee untouched, gaze locked on the empty parking lot. He had chosen this place deliberately for its privacy, its anonymity. Here, old secrets and power plays unfolded as easily as ordering a slice of pie. Senator Victor Whitaker arrived late, deliberately, as if to remind everyone who controlled time. He entered with a blast of sharp winter air, the bell jingling like an announcement of royalty. Tailored dark suit too fine for a greasy spoon, he carried himself like a man who had never been told no. Nathan didn't stand. He didn't offer a hand. He simply gestured to the seat opposite. Whitaker sat, scanning the room to confirm they were alone, then fixed Nathan with a smirk that never reached his eyes. "Colonel, you call this meeting. What exactly do you want?" Nathan met his stare without blinking. "I wanted to look you in the eye before the truth tears your world apart." Whitaker's laugh was short, brittle. "You military types always see everything in absolutes, battlefields everywhere. But this is my town, Colonel, my rules." The waitress approached with coffee. Whitaker waved her away before she could pour. "Let's not waste time. We both know what this is about. Your daughter, my son, the school, the headlines." He slid a folded check across the scarred Formica table, an amount most people never saw in a year. Full scholarship for Maya. Any school she wants. Her record vanishes. Your wife's next posting? I'll make it happen. All you have to do is let this die quietly. Nathan didn't even glance at the check. He pushed it back, slow and deliberate. "You really believe everyone has a price?" Whitaker's jaw tightened. "Everyone does. Some just haven't been pushed hard enough." Nathan's voice stayed quiet, steady. "I've already submitted a formal request to the Department of Defense, an investigation into discrimination against military families at Crestwood, and into your role in the school's federal funding." Whitaker's composure cracked for the first time. "You'd burn everything down. For what? A principle?" "For justice. For my daughter. For every kid you and your allies have trampled to stay untouchable." Whitaker's voice dropped, venom seeping through. "You think you're the first idealist I've crushed? I built this town, my money, my connections. No judge or cop within 50 miles would ignore my call." Nathan's expression remained unchanged. "Then make those calls. You'll find the world is shifting, and you're on the wrong side of it." Whitaker sneered. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, Colonel. I've made governors. I've ended generals. Your reputation is nothing against mine." Nathan finished his coffee at last, finally eyeing the check as though it were trash. "You're not the first bully I've faced, and far from the most dangerous. The difference is I fight for something larger than myself." Whitaker's voice shook with barely contained rage. "You're finished. I'll ruin your career, your family, everything. You and that brat of yours will regret ever coming to my town." Nathan rose from the booth, calm as ever. "No, Senator. The only regret I have is that it took this long for someone to stand up to you." He placed his cover on his head. "You're scared, Victor. Not of me, but of the truth." Whitaker's fists clenched around the rejected check, knuckles white. He leaned forward, hissing, "You're making a grave mistake. Walk away while you still can." Nathan offered only a small, cold smile. "I'm not the one running." He stepped out into the crisp air, leaving Whitaker seething in the booth. Coffee untouched, threats lingering thick in the air. As Nathan disappeared into the morning light, Whitaker yanked out his phone, face contorted with fury. He spoke in a low, vicious growl. "Handle it before the hearing. Teach that girl what happens to anyone who crosses me. Do not fail." Far from the warmth of home, a storm was gathering, one that would test every boundary, every loyalty, every shred of resolve. The Harrison family had thrown down the gauntlet.
Now Whitaker would answer with everything he had left. The sun was dipping behind the rooftops as Major Sophia Harrison guided the family sedan down a quiet, tree-lined back road. Groceries shifted softly in the trunk, and Maya sat in the passenger seat, the memory drive secure in her backpack, their hearts still pounding from the chaos of the past 24 hours.
Sophia glanced sideways at her daughter, the deep lines of worry carved into her face, yet her eyes burned with unyielding steel. "We'll make it through this," she said, her voice calm and almost tender, even as her knuckles gripped the steering wheel tighter. Maya nodded, forcing a small, steady smile across her lips, though nerves crackled just beneath her skin like live wires. She had long ago learned never to treat a moment of peace as permanent. Every quiet interval felt borrowed, every safe mile one heartbeat from vanishing. They turned off the main road onto a secluded stretch flanked by dense woods and deepening shadows. The world outside grew still, broken only by the low hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. Then, abruptly, headlights blazed in the rearview mirror, harsh and unrelenting. A battered pickup truck roared out from a hidden side road, engines snarling as it closed the gap and rode their bumper dangerously close. Sophia's eyes narrowed to slits. "Hold on tight," she said quietly, voice steady as ever. Maya clutched the door handle, bracing as the truck surged forward again, swerving aggressively alongside them and forcing the sedan onto the gravel shoulder. Tires screamed in protest. Dust and loose gravel spat against the doors like gunfire. Sophia's hands remained rock steady on the wheel. She eased the speed deliberately, keeping control, fully aware that any crash would surrender the advantage to whoever had orchestrated this. The truck skidded to a brutal stop ahead, boxing them in completely. Before either could draw a full breath, 3 masked men leapt from the vehicle, 2 from the doors, 1 from the bed, faces hidden behind rough bandanas. A third figure emerged from the tree-lined shadows, crowbar gripped tightly, slamming it repeatedly against the trunk with heavy, menacing thuds. The world narrowed to that rhythmic pounding and the pounding of their own hearts. One attacker hammered his fist against the driver's side window. "Open up, lady. We're only here for what belongs to us. Toss the bag out. No one needs to get hurt." Sophia kept her voice low, controlled. "Maya, listen carefully. Deep breath, stay sharp." Maya nodded once, adrenaline flooding every vein, every lesson from her father flashing vividly through her mind. Breathe through the fear, stay calm under pressure, watch for openings, move only when it counts. "Last chance," the man barked outside, then smashed the window with the butt of a heavy flashlight. Glass shards exploded inward, scattering across the dashboard and seats. Another wrenched Maya's door open violently, lunging inside with rough, greedy hands reaching for the backpack. Sophia moved first. In a blur of precision, she snatched a metal pen from the center console and, as the thug's arm extended through the broken glass, drove it downward in one lightning-fast strike, targeting a nerve bundle in his wrist. He let out a sharp howl, his weapon clattering away as he clutched his arm in shocked agony. The second attacker dove into the back seat, clawing desperately for the backpack strapped across Maya's shoulder. Maya reacted instantly. She kicked out hard, driving her heel into his knee exactly as her father had drilled into her countless times, then twisted sharply and slammed her elbow into his face with controlled force. He staggered back, dazed and reeling. Sophia was already out of her seat and moving. She flung her door open, seized the nearest attacker's collar in an iron grip, and used his own forward momentum to flip him hard onto the gravel shoulder. He landed with a heavy thud, breath exploding from his lungs in a pained gasp. She followed without pause, dropping into a textbook joint lock that twisted his arm until he screamed for mercy, voice cracking in surrender. The third man charged her wildly, swinging the crowbar in a wide, desperate arc. Sophia sidestepped with predator-like calm, blocked the swing cleanly with her forearm, then pivoted his forward rush into a devastating knee to the gut before disarming him in one seamless, effortless twist. The crowbar clanged uselessly to the ground. Maya held her own in the confined space. The thug in the back now flashed a knife, slashing in frantic, uncontrolled arcs.
She ducked low beneath the blade, slammed the car door forcefully into his side to disrupt his balance, then struck upward with her thumb, precise pressure to the throat, enough to stun and incapacitate without killing, exactly as she had practiced in the gym under her father's watchful eye. Sophia dispatched the third attacker with a sharp, measured strike to the temple. He crumpled to the roadside, moaning weakly. 2 lay neutralized, the third barely crawling. The dazed second man struggled to rise. Sophia closed the distance in an instant, pinning him with her knee and locking his wrist until he whimpered pitifully and released the knife. The entire ambush from headlights to surrender had unfolded in less than 90 seconds. Sophia stood tall in the dimming light, breathing hard but perfectly composed. 3 defeated men sprawled around her on the roadside, each gasping in pain and defeat. Maya climbed out of the car, backpack clutched tight, body trembling from the surge but very much alive, eyes wide with the raw rush of survival and lingering disbelief. Sophia calmly pulled out her phone and dialed 911. When she spoke, her voice was steady as ice, carrying even a faint trace of amusement. "Yes, this is Major Sophia Harrison. Send ambulances to County Road 14. There are 3 men here requiring urgent medical care. They apparently mistook a mother and daughter for easy targets. Dispatch a police unit as well, please." She turned to Maya, offering a firm, reassuring nod. "You did exceptionally well, sweetheart. Always protect your center. You kept your head clear the whole time." Maya managed a shaky but genuine smile, still catching her breath as the adrenaline ebbed. Sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder as they echoed through the darkening trees. Sophia stood unflinching, daughter at her side, mother and daughter forged in fire, unmistakably proving to any observer that they were anything but victims. As the first cruiser pulled up, Naya noticed the familiar insignia on the doors, sheriff's deputies long known to be close allies of Whitaker. The officers emerged cautiously, hands resting near holsters, scanning the scene with open suspicion rather than immediate concern for the obvious victims. One stepped forward, voice cold and clipped. "Major Harrison, you're under arrest for assault and battery. Place your hands where we can see them." Maya's instinctive protest caught in her throat as the cuffs quickly clicked around Sophia's wrists. The attackers on the ground groaned dramatically, suddenly portraying themselves as the injured innocents. Maya's heart hammered wildly, fear and fury battling inside her chest. Maya locked eyes with Sophia's. Her gaze remained fierce, utterly unbowed. "Don't worry, Maya," she said quietly, voice carrying unshakable confidence. "They're not ready for us." Red and blue lights pulsed across the gravel roadside, casting eerie shadows as the thin line between law and injustice blurred deeper into the twilight.
The police station reeked of stale coffee and harsh disinfectant, a place deliberately designed to grind people down with waiting. Major Sophia Harrison sat on a hard plastic chair, wrists now uncuffed, but still under watchful eyes, her posture ramrod straight despite the darkening bruise along her forearm. Maya stood a few feet away, backpack hugged tightly to her chest, eyes scanning every shift in the room. Colonel Nathan Harrison paced near the wall like a barely leashed force, tension radiating from him. Sheriff Roy Bennett leaned against the desk, arms folded, jaw set with irritation. "Major Harrison," he said, voice weighted with false authority, "you assaulted 3 men on a public road. I don't care what your rank is, no special treatment here." Sophia met his stare without a flicker. "They initiated the attack. I defended my daughter. Your deputies saw the injuries." The sheriff scoffed. "Funny, the only story we've got is yours." Before Nathan could respond, the station doors swung open with quiet inevitability. A woman in a crisp, conservative suit stepped inside, badge clipped neatly at her waist, eyes sharp and assessing. She didn't hurry. She didn't raise her voice. She simply belonged. "Captain Amelia Torres," she announced calmly, presenting her credentials. "Judge Advocate General's Corps. I'm here representing Major Sophia Harrison and her family." Bennett straightened, irritation giving way to unease. "This is a civilian matter." Captain Torres offered a thin smile.
It stopped being civilian the moment you detained a decorated officer acting in lawful self-defense. She placed a tablet on the counter and tapped the screen. Before you say another word, I suggest you watch this. The video began, clear dash cam footage from Sophia's car, time-stamped and unbroken. It captured the pickup forcing them off the road, masked men shattering the window, the knife flashing first. No cuts, no gaps. The truth played out in undeniable detail. The room fell silent. Captain Torres paused at the frame, showing the crowbar mid-swing. "Your suspects initiated the attack," she said evenly. "They attempted robbery, intimidation, and assault with deadly weapons. Major Harrison responded with proportional force. Any continued detention would constitute unlawful arrest." Bennett swallowed hard. I wasn't fully aware." "You were informed," Torres corrected coolly. "You chose to ignore it." Nathan exhaled slowly, the coiled tension easing a fraction. Maya felt a tight knot loosen in her chest as Bennett waved the deputies off, muttering orders he could no longer enforce with conviction. Within the hour, Sophia was released. They left the station together, the night air cool and cleansing after the stifling interior. Sirens faded behind them as they drove straight to the military medical center across town, where lights burned bright for reasons that truly mattered. The facility was quiet, efficient. Sophia moved with familiar authority, signing forms, guiding Maya to an exam room. When the door closed, the world shrank to sterile white walls and the soft hum of equipment. "Sit," Sophia said gently. "Let me see." Maya obeyed, lifting her chin as her mother examined the bruises with professional calm that barely masked deeper emotion. Sophia measured swelling, tested range of motion, documented every mark with meticulous precision. She paused at Maya's cheek, where a distinct dark imprint curved beneath the skin. Sophia leaned closer, eyes narrowing under the bright light. "Hold still." She adjusted the lamp and snapped a high-resolution photograph. The mark wasn't random. It wasn't an open hand. It was a clear pattern. Sophia's voice dropped. "There it is." "What?" Maya frowned. Sophia pulled up a reference image on her tablet. Mrs. Evelyn Carver's large, distinctive ring with its raised emblem. Heavy, oversized, the kind she wore daily to ensure everyone noticed. Sophia overlaid the photos, curves, ridges, pressure points aligned perfectly. "This," she said quietly, "is a contact imprint. The geometry matches the ring's face exactly. Not conjecture, forensic correlation." Maya's breath caught. "So it proves—" "Direct physical assault," Sophia finished. "Direct by a specific object tied to a specific person. Medical evidence doesn't lie." Nathan watched from the corner, jaw tight, pride and fury warring in his eyes. "Will it hold up?" Sophia nodded once. "In any hearing, any court, absolutely." Captain Torres reappeared at the door. "We'll add this to the official record, along with the dash cam footage and the decrypted files you recovered." Maya thought of Mr. Ramirez, of the memory card still hidden in her bag, of the quiet courage that had delivered it into her hands. "They always try to erase everything," Torres said. "That's why evidence matters." Sophia completed the documentation, sealing files with digital signatures, chain of custody unbreakable. She looked at Maya, expression softening. "You did everything right." Maya swallowed. "They're not finished." "No," Torres agreed. "Neither are we." Outside, dawn crept pale and uncertain across the parking lot. Nathan checked his phone, messages stacking, news alerts sharpening their blades. Whitaker's influence still weighed heavily on the town. Torres gathered her papers. "The Board of Education hearing is tomorrow morning." Nathan nodded. "Whitaker thinks he owns the room." Torres's eyes flicked to the magnified ring imprint on the tablet. "He's counting on silence and shortcuts." Sophia took Maya's hand. "We'll give them facts." Maya squared her shoulders, fear still present, but steadied by something far stronger. "Let him think he's won." They stepped into the new morning together. Evidence secured, resolve unbreakable. The hearing would begin at dawn. The house on Elmsworth Lane sat shrouded in darkness, lights dimmed, curtains drawn against the chill of an approaching verdict. Inside, Mrs. Evelyn Carver moved through her rooms like a ghost, footsteps muffled on worn carpet, heart pounding with the dull certainty of fate closing in.
The walls were lined with faded certificates, degrees, Teacher of the Year plaques, and old photos of smiling student groups from brighter days. But tonight it all felt as fragile as the heavy silence pressing in around her. Mrs. Evelyn Carver had barely slept. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the flash of the torn flag, the accusing fire in Maya's gaze, the bruises blooming on the girl's cheek, and beneath it all, the crushing realization that the system she had trusted for so long was built not on justice, but on raw survival. Loyalty had never been to the truth, only to the chain of command, and tonight she would discover just how easily that chain could break. A car pulled up outside. The engine idled briefly before cutting off. She knew that sound. She had heard it many late nights when deals were made in the dark. She smoothed her skirt, forced her expression into a careful mask, and waited by the door. Senator Victor Whitaker entered without ceremony, trench coat flapping behind him, face sharp and drawn. He wasted no time on pleasantries. He set a suitcase on the kitchen table, followed by a sealed envelope and a one-way plane ticket. His voice was flat, all business. "You'll leave tonight, Evelyn. One way to Dallas. As enough cash to start over. The statement is in the envelope. Memorize it, then destroy it. You take the blame for everything. Student violence, falsified braiding, all of it. Admit to a nervous breakdown, regret, whatever fits. You're the convenient scapegoat. My son and I walk away clean." Mrs. Carver stared at him, her face going numb. "What about my pension, my teaching license?" Whitaker didn't blink. "Consider them the price of loyalty. Take the fall and you walk away free. You've been compensated more than fairly. There's nothing left tying us together." She shook her head, voice thin but edged with anger. "All those years I protected your son, covered for Principal Reed, fixed every problem you handed me. You said we were a team." He leaned in closer, voice lowering. "We were, Evelyn, but teams exist to win. When someone drops the ball, the rest keep playing. Don't fool yourself. You chose your side the first time you altered a grade or looked the other way." The words struck harder than any slap she had ever given a student. "You're throwing me away." Whitaker shrugged, expression impassive. "If I don't, you drag us all down. The board, the donors, the entire town. There are bigger things at stake than your feelings." He turned to leave, but she grabbed his sleeve, desperation flaring in her eyes. "You owe me more than this, after everything." He pulled away coldly. "No, Evelyn, I owe you nothing. You're a liability now. Take the money and disappear. It's your only chance at any dignity." His words hung heavy with contempt. She released him, watching as he strode down the hall and out the door without a backward glance. The suitcase and ticket remained on the table like silent accusations. Mrs. Carver's hands trembled, not from fear, but from a rising fury. For years she had lived by their rules, sacrificing pieces of herself to survive in a world that rewarded cruelty and silence. Now, as the net closed around her, she finally understood. She had never truly been part of their circle, only a tool, a disposable shield. She caught her reflection in the dark window, a woman hollowed out by years of compromise, haunted by a profession she had long ago stopped loving. Yet fragments of memory surfaced, the small triumphs, a shy student finally finding her voice, a quiet child raising his hand for the first time, those rare days when teaching had actually felt like it mattered. How had she become this, a villain in someone else's story? Her phone buzzed on the counter with unread messages. The suitcase waited. She reached for her coat, then paused as an idea sparked. With fingers that still shook, she opened her phone's voice memo app and tapped record, instinctively, the way a lifetime of secrets had taught her to be careful. She had started it the moment Whitaker entered. She replayed it now, every word, every threat, the conspiracy laid bare in the quiet kitchen. Proof. A bitter, broken laugh escaped her lips. Whitaker thought she was finished, but even a pawn could topple a king with the right move. She pushed the suitcase aside and dialed a number she had never saved under a real name. When she spoke, her voice was low, measured, edged with cold resolve. "I want to speak to Colonel Nathan Harrison." She waited in a silence, feeling the woman she once was, the teacher, the fighter, the person she had been before regret clouded everything, rising through the haze. She would not vanish quietly. If destruction was coming, she would choose its shape. Her mind raced through everything she had witnessed, the closed-door deals, the payoffs, the betrayals, the fragile web of secrecy and fear that held Crestwood together. It could all unravel now, if she pulled the right thread. As the call connected, she whispered to the empty room, more to herself than anyone else, "You should never have underestimated me." On the other end, a firm voice answered. Mrs. Evelyn Carver squared her shoulders, ready to trade her secrets, not for Whitaker's silence, but for her own redemption. The suitcase and ticket sat forgotten on the table. In her eyes, for the first time in years, burned something fierce and hungry, something very much like hope, unbowed. The parking lot behind Crestwood High School felt like another world at midnight, empty, windswept, washed in the pale flicker of aging street lamps. It seemed the kind of place where buried truths could finally crawl out from the shadows.
Colonel Nathan Harrison stood beside his truck, arms folded, gaze sweeping the perimeter out of habit. A soldier never wasted darkness. Darkness always concealed something. Footsteps approached, uneasy and cautious. Mrs. Evelyn Carver emerged from behind a row of idle buses, wrapped in long coat, hair disheveled, face drawn tight with exhaustion. She looked older than she had that morning, as though the day had stolen years from her. She stopped several feet away, neither advancing nor retreating. "You came alone," Nathan said, voice steady, unmoving. "So did you," she whispered, clutching her purse like an anchor against the night wind. A gust swept through the lot, carrying the faint scent of oil and asphalt. Mrs. Carver glanced around, nerves raw. "We don't have much time. Whitaker monitors everything." Nathan met her eyes, unflinching. "You said you had information." Her fingers trembled as she pulled out her phone, unlocking it with the hesitation of someone bracing for impact. She scrolled, tapped, then held it out. This is the conversation he had with me tonight. The entire thing." Nathan didn't reach for it immediately. "What exactly am I listening to?" Her throat tightened. "Whitaker ordered me to take the fall. He gave me a one-way ticket out of state, cash to disappear. Told me to confess to everything, the grade fixing, abuse of authority, the attack on your daughter." Her voice cracked into a bitter laugh. "He said the public needed a villain, and I fit the role perfectly." Nathan finally took the phone. She hit play. Whitaker's voice spilled into the night, smooth, controlled, dripping with arrogance. "You'll disappear, Evelyn. You'll take the money, admit what I tell you to, and vanish. I can't have my son dragged down because you failed to control one student." A pause, the unmistakable click of a suitcase latch. "You were paid for your loyalty. Consider this your severance package. Take the fall or I'll ruin you entirely." Nathan ended the recording, jaw anched tight. "That's just one part," Mrs. Carver said, breath uneven. "There's more, about the grades, the payments, the favors, enough to burn him to the ground." Nathan pocketed the device. "This will break him." She offered a hollow smile. "It won't fix me, but it's something." Silence settled between them, heavy yet strangely clarifying. For once, Mrs. Evelyn Carver looked Nathan directly in the face, no longer hiding behind authority or bitterness. "I hated her," she admitted suddenly, voice cracking. "Maya, I hated her the moment I realized she had something I lost years ago." Nathan's expression remained unchanged, but he listened. "Maya, she had pride, real pride, the kind that doesn't beg for approval, doesn't bend to fear. I traded mine away piece by piece, first for a better department, then for a board recommendation, then for Whitaker's favor. I told myself it was ambition." She shook her head. "But it was cowardice, and she reminded me of what I wasn't." It took Nathan a moment to respond. When he did it, his voice was low and firm. "You hurt my daughter.
You tried to break her spirit. You stood with men who used children as leverage. He stepped forward just enough for her to feel the full weight of the truth. I'm not going to promise forgiveness. Her eyes glistened at the sting of those words, but she didn't look away. Nathan went on, but you gave us the truth, and that matters. You'll still answer for what you did, Mrs. Carver. But now, at least you'll face judgment with a shred of your conscience intact. She swallowed hard, tears gathering, yet refusing to fall. I don't want forgiveness, Colonel. I want him destroyed. Nathan nodded once, slow, deliberate. He will be. Mrs. Carver stepped back, the night swallowing her edges. But just before turning away, she spoke one last time, soft, fierce, reborn. Make him fall, she whispered. Make him feel every inch of the ruin he planned for that girl. Do it for her. Do it for every student he's crushed. Do it for me. She didn't wait for a reply. She simply turned and walked into the darkness, coat fluttering behind her, footsteps fading until her silhouette dissolved beneath the street lamp, and she was gone. Nathan watched until there was nothing left to see. Only then did he allow a slow exhale. He opened the phone again, listening once more to Whitaker's threats, his arrogance, his certainty that power made him untouchable. Not anymore. He pocketed the device, climbed into his truck, and drove off, headlights cutting a path through the empty lot towards the truth waiting at dawn. Tomorrow morning the public hearing would begin. Whitaker believed he owned every seat in that room. He had no idea what was coming. The town hall filled before sunrise, hard benches, scuffed floors, the air thick with perfume, coffee, and judgment. Cameras perched like birds along the balcony rail, lenses tilted towards the dais where the school board sat in a stiff line. Reporters murmured.
Neighbors whispered in hushed clusters, and the low, restless hum of an expectant crowd never fully faded. Senator Victor Whitaker entered first, navy suit impeccable, smile polished with practiced confidence. Principal Harlan Reed trailed behind him, pale yet forcing posture, tie knotted too tightly. Connor kept his head down, half hidden in his father's shadow. Mrs. Evelyn Carver slipped in near the back, scarf pulled high around her throat, eyes steady and unreadable. On the opposite aisle, the Harrison family took their seats without fanfare. Colonel Nathan Harrison stood protectively behind Maya and Sophia, hands clasped, expression impenetrable. Captain Amelia Torres from JAGS sat beside them, slim folder resting in her lap, gaze fixed forward, spine rigid. Maya's cheek still carried the faint, curved imprint of a ring, an ugly bruise that spoke louder than any prepared speech. The board chair struck the gavel. This hearing will address the serious allegations arising at Crestwood High. He cleared his throat, voice wavering slightly. We will hear first from Principal Reed and Senator Whitaker. Whitaker rose smoothly, nodding to the crowd like a performer raising the curtain. Ladies and gentlemen, this matter is straightforward. A student raised in an environment steeped in force brought that aggression into our school. She defied authority, assaulted classmates and a teacher, and now her family attempts to shield her behind military rank. He placed a paternal hand on Connor's shoulder. We honor service, but no one stands above the rules. Scattered applause rippled through the room, a few heads nodding. The cameras captured every moment. Reed took the podium next, voice strained yet determined. We tried to support Maya Harrison, we truly did, but she escalated minor disagreements into full confrontations. As principal, I must protect all students and staff. He paused as someone hissed from the crowd. The chair banged the gavel again. Reed pressed on. I acted on the information available to me. We are an institution. We cannot bend to fear. He said to polite, subdued claps. Whitaker leaned back, visibly satisfied. The chair turned toward the opposite aisle. Miss Harrison, you may respond. Maya stood calmly. She didn't adjust the microphone or search the crowd for approval. She simply placed a small drive on the podium and spoke softly into the charged quiet. I won't argue. I'll show you. The first video filled the dual projectors, grainy but unmistakable, shot from a high vent angle in the history classroom. The door closed, blinds dropped. Mrs. Evelyn Carver pointed furiously. Subtitles synced the night before by Sophia captured every word. Connor advanced. Maya clutched the folded flag tightly to her chest. The slat landed hard, Maya's head snapping sideways, the ring's emblem flashing briefly in the light, ugly and undeniable. The crowd drew a collective breath. The fight erupted, Connor's fists rising and falling, hands clawing at the flag until the fabric tore with a visible rip. Whispers exploded into open voices throughout the hall. The second file loaded, crisper audio, dim kitchen lighting. Whitaker's voice, smooth and unmistakable. "You'll take the money, Evelyn. You'll confess to everything I draft. You'll be gone by dawn. My son and I remain untouched." The click of a suitcase latch punctuated his contempt. "You were paid for your loyalty. Take the fall, or I'll ruin you completely." A stunned silence gripped the room. The chair stared at the table as though it had suddenly spoken. From the second row, a woman in an elegant coat rose, jaw tight with barely contained fury, the principal's wife. She fixed Reed with a look sharp enough to cut. "You told me those rumors were lies," she said, voice trembling though she held no microphone. She pulled off her thick gold wedding ring, years of ritual stripped away in a second, and hurled it across the dais. It struck Reed's chest and clattered to the floor. Gasps tore through the hall. "Order!" the chair barked, more plea than command, but the moment was already immortalized on every camera. Maya lifted her chin as the room held its collective breath. "I didn't come here to humiliate anyone," she said quietly into the charged quiet. "I won't argue. I'll show you." Captain Torres rose smoothly, voice calm and precise. "For the record," she addressed the board directly, "the medical report documents a patterned contusion on Miss Harrison's cheek, consistent with Mrs. Evelyn Carver's distinctive ring. The dashcam video last night confirms an orchestrated roadside assault. The audio provided by Mrs. Carver herself establishes coercion, bribery, and witness tampering by Senator Victor Whitaker." She placed the slim folder on the board's table. "Chain of custody is unbroken. Copies are already filed with state and federal authorities." Whitaker shot to his feet. "This is a fabricated travesty." "Sit down, Senator," Torres said, voice never rising. The quiet confidence carried more weight than any shout. The rear doors opened with practiced precision. 2 state troopers entered, flanked by an assistant attorney general and 3 plainclothes agents. The crowd parted instinctively. The lead trooper approached the dais, reading from an official page. "Senator Victor Whitaker, you are under arrest for bribery, coercion, intimidation of a witness, with additional charges pending for obstruction of a criminal investigation." Whitaker paled, then flushed with rage. "Do you have any idea who I am?" The trooper met his eyes without flinching. "Yes, sir. That's why there are 3 sets of cuffs." The room erupted. Shouts, scattered cheers, a few bitter curses. Connor shrank deeper into his chair as troopers took his father's arms. Whitaker twisted, voice rising toward the board, the cameras, anyone. "This is political persecution." Click. The cuffs closed. Across the aisle, Mrs. Evelyn Carver stared straight ahead, face wet with silent tears, yet composed. She didn't resist when 2 officers approached gently to escort her for questioning. She simply nodded once, accepting both the consequences she had earned and the redemption she had chosen. Principal Reed attempted to stand, mouth opening as if to reclaim control. "We can still fix this," but no sound emerged. His gaze dropped to the wedding ring glinting on the floor beneath the desk. He didn't reach for it. The board chair, cheeks drained of color, cleared his throat into the unsteady microphone. "Effective immediately, Mrs. Evelyn Carver is suspended pending termination. Principal Harlan Reed is relieved of duties pending full investigation." He turned toward Maya, warts catching before he forced them out. "Miss Harrison, on behalf of this board, we failed you. We failed our students. That ends today." No applause followed this. Only a different, heavier silence, the shared exhale of a town finally confronting what it had long avoided. Maya lowered her eyes, not in triumph or gloating, simply weary. Sophia reached her hand. Nathan stood behind them, shoulders easing for the first time in weeks. Captain Torres closed her folder with a quiet final snap as troopers led Whitaker down the aisle amid flashing yammers.
He jerked against their grip, voice raying into a hoarse roar. "You'll all regret this!" Connor couldn't meet his father's eyes, head bowed, face hollowed by a shame he had never been taught to bear. The gavel fell one last time. "This hearing is adjourned," the chair declared, voice trembling with something close to relief. In the sudden surge of movement and voiceless, Maya remained still for a moment. The image would linger long after the hall emptied. Whitaker in cuffs, diminished and raging, Connor shrinking, Reed staring at a ring he could no longer claim, the Harrison family standing resolute in the center of a storm that had finally broken.
Justice had arrived, loud, public, and irreversible, but even the most righteous wounds healed far slower than any verdict. The final chill of winter faded from Crestwood as April eased into May, and the campus at last felt truly alive again. 1 month had passed since the town's reckoning, a month filled with headlines, formal hearings, and quiet apologies whispered in hallways. Familiar faces of old power were gone, leaving gaps now filled by something new, a tentative respect and an almost hopeful calm. Mrs. Evelyn Carver had lost her teaching license and awaited sentencing. Connor Whitaker's name disappeared from every attendance sheet. The halls no longer echoed with his swagger or the footsteps of his former followers. Principal Harlan Reed's office remained empty, blinds permanently drawn, door locked, his legacy reduced to a forgotten footnote and a lawyer's contact card. Rumors whispered that his wife had taken the children and the house. There were hard lessons in that kind of loss. A new principal now greeted students each morning at the gate, handshake firm, eyes genuinely attentive. She walked the corridors not as a warden, but as someone determined to learn every name and every story. The flagpole at the center of the quad stood freshly painted. Beneath it, the grass grew thick and soft, marked only by the steady footsteps of students finally learning to walk alongside one another instead of against. On this bright Monday morning, a line of students gathered for the pledge. Ethan, once the invisible target of every cruel joke, now wore a Letterman jacket, a gift from his uncle, earned not through sports, but through the simple belief that he, too, deserved to belong. He caught Maya's eye as she approached, offering a small but proud smile. Maya's uniform was immaculate, jacket pressed and gleaming, her grandfather's badge pinned above her heart. The bruise on her cheek had faded completely, but the lesson it taught lingered. She moved through the crowd with quiet confidence. Friends nodded in greeting. Strangers stepped aside with unspoken respect. The new principal took the microphone, her voice clear and strong. Today we honor not only our nation, but the courage it takes to stand for what is right, even when it is hard. Let us remember that the true measure of a community lies not in avoiding trouble, but in facing it together. She stepped aside. Maya led the pledge. "Please place your hand over your heart," she said. The entire assembly complied, hands flat, faces turned toward the flag fluttering overhead. For the first time Maya could remember, there were no snickers, no whispers, no muttered slurs behind her back, only the unified sound of 100 voices speaking the pledge with sincerity, the words ringing true and unbroken. Maya's gaze swept the crowd and found what she sought. Near the edge of the quad, standing slightly apart, yet no longer alone, was Mr. Ramirez. For once, he wore no janitor's uniform. Instead, he stood in a faded army dress coat, medals aligned with quiet pride across his chest. His hair was neatly combed, posture straight as attention. He held a crisp salute, eyes glistening as they met Maya's. As the pledge concluded, she returned the salute, sharp, respectful, soldier to soldier. The silent exchange carried everything. You were seen. You mattered. You kept your honor when others lost theirs. Afterward, Ethan approached, lingering at her side. "I never thought I'd feel proud to stand here," he said softly, voice still shy. "I never thought it would feel safe." Maya smiled. "You stood up, and that's all it ever takes." Students began drifting back toward the building as the ordinary school day resumed. Yet the air itself felt different, lighter, changed in a subtle but undeniable way. No one tripped Ethan in the halls anymore. No one dared sneer as Maya passed. Respect grew slowly, sometimes awkwardly, but it took root, stubborn as spring grass pushing through concrete cracks. Later, as the quad emptied, Maya found herself standing beside Mr. Ramirez. He straightened his cuffs with slightly trembling hands. She smiled warmly. "You wore the uniform longer than anyone here. Thank you for not letting them erase the truth." He shook his head humbly, then pressed a folded note into her palm. The handwriting was careful, almost ceremonial. "Honor is not a badge, it's a choice. Every day you reminded me." She read it twice, letting the weight settle deep. The new principal approached. "Miss Harrison, I want to thank you. You showed us how to be better." Maya hesitated. "It wasn't just me." "It never is," the principal agreed, "but the first to speak makes it possible for others to follow." At lunch, Maya joined Ethan at their old table. No one challenged them, no one jeered. They talked about classes, summer plans, ordinary things. And for the first time, ordinary felt like the greatest gift. As the afternoon bell rang and students poured from classrooms, Maya lingered in the sunshine, warmth settling on her shoulders like approval. She glanced down at her badge, polished until it caught every ray of light. The memory of the struggle remained, but it no longer defined her. At the edge of the field, Mr. Ramirez watched, raising a gentle wave. She returned it with a formal salute, one soldier to another, no words needed. The message was unmistakable. You don't need a uniform to carry honor. Honor lives in anyone willing to stand for what is right, no matter the odds. Maya turned her face to the sky. The flag snapped and billowed overhead, her grandfather's badge winking in the sunlight. For the first time Maya could remember, the hope blooming inside her reached beyond herself, to everyone who had ever been told to stay silent, to back down, to simply go along. She smiled, open, fearless, free, as the days stretched wide and full of promise before her. In every corner of Crestwood High, the story of Maya, her family, and those who chose to stand with her lived on, a lasting reminder that true honor is measured not by medals or titles, but by the courage to defend what is right, even when the world stands against you. Justice is rarely swift, and healing takes time, but hope grows wherever people refuse to remain silent. Mr. Ramirez, Ethan, and so many others found their voices because one person dared to speak the truth. Would you have the strength to stand up if you saw injustice in your community? If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that inspire change. Together, let's build a world where honor, respect, and courage are not just words, but a way of life.